morning, everyone. Welcome to the CalLane PATH Technical Assistant Marketplace webinar. My name is Lisa Bistra. I am the Chief over the Providing Access and Transforming Health, or PATH unit. With us today, we have, from DHCS, we have Michael Weezar. He is the Chief over the Managed Care Program Oversight Branch. And Jill Clayton, who is the Chief over the Project Coordination section. Our friends over at Public Consulting Group with us today include Trish Perazzelli. She is the TA Marketplace Advisor. Jenna Wall, who is the TA Marketplace Lead. Katie McGuire and Eliza Met, who are both TA Marketplace team members. Our agenda today is going to include the current state of the TA marketplace update, submitting a successful SOW and budget, other policy reminders, and other resources, and finally a Q&A. With that, I think I'm going to pass the torch over to Jenna.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. We can go to the next slide. So I'm just going to give a brief update of where we are on the TA Marketplace, particularly for those of you who are new. We can go to the next slide. So again, what is the TA Marketplace? The PATH Technical and Assistance Initiative enables entities that are providing or are intending to provide enhanced care management and or community supports under CalAIM, giving them the access to technical assistance from very qualified TA vendors. Vendors are promoted via the virtual TA Marketplace, which is a place in which TA recipients can access the TA resources. The Marketplace was designed, launched, and is currently managed by Public Consulting Group, which serves as a third-party administrator with oversight from DHCS. Next slide, please. So again, all of this information is available in previous webinars and our website, but eligible TA recipients may include, but are not limited to, cities and counties, community-based organizations, correctional agency, tribes and Indian health programs, and recipients must submit attestation demonstrating that they are either contracted with a managed care plan, planning to contract with a managed care plan for ECM and community supports, or have been approved by DHCS. Next slide, please. We have 7 different TA domains by which we organize TA projects. You will see these listed here, but more information is available on the TAM webpage, in which we share example projects for how they would fall into each domain. We also have on-demand resources, which are available to the public, which will be noted towards the end of today's call. And then for services available on the Marketplace, we do have off-the-shelf projects, which are ready-to-go offerings with clear project goals and deliverables, and then hands-on projects that are customized to meet the unique needs of a recipient. Next slide, please. So for our approved TA vendors, we are excited to share that we added 45 new TA vendors in round 5, and then 19 of our existing vendors were approved in new domains. We also have almost 100 vendors approved in one or more of the areas of focus, which are listed below. Also, as part of this procurement, we have 7 new on-demand resources that will be posted to the on-demand resource library this summer. As noted before, we did have round 5 within areas of focus, vendors that were new and those that were already approved could apply to be designated in one or more of these areas of focus. And we're happy to share those stats below, but also available on the Marketplace themselves and in filters to easily identify vendors with this designation. Next slide, please. And so where are we right now in terms of projects? As of today, we have over 1,500 approved TA projects that have been executed across 460 plus recipients. So really exciting to show the growth on the TA Marketplace over the past year or so. Next slide. I will now pass it to Lisa to introduce some new Marketplace updates before diving into the details.
Thank you, Jenna. We wanted to go ahead and provide you with an update on the TA Marketplace. In the Marketplace projects, we have seen an uptake in interest in the Marketplace. Recent TA project requests have pushed us beyond our budgetary projections. And because of this, we are going to be implementing some changes that are going to help ensure that we are able to equitably distribute the resources that we have. This is going to have an effect on how our projects are reviewed, approved, and prioritized. Part of that is anything that is currently under review is going to be evaluated with these changes in mind. And you're going to see things that are going to be coming a little bit slower than they have in the past, just as we kind of work through these processes. We are also going to be shifting to a more competitive framework for evaluating those project submissions. If we have a vendor or recipient who wants to withdraw a project that is currently under review, then we ask that you reference the policy guides for vendor and or recipient that are linked here for guidance on how to go about making that happen. And the TA vendor and on-demand resource procurements. Initially, we had anticipated hosting a round 6 procurement for TA vendors and on-demand resources. As we just talked about here, because of that increased engagement and existing vendor capacity, it's been determined that there is no need at this time for a round 6 procurement. So that will not be happening this summer. And that is our brief update for you. Jenna, I'm passing back.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. All right. So as Lisa stated, we do have new criteria that will be applied to TA Marketplace projects. This is going to be applied to current and new project eligibility application and scope of work and budgets. The first criteria is that projects will only be approved for new TA recipients unless a current TA recipient is applying for transitional rent support or as to be determined by DHCS. Note that organizations participating in a TA project under a hub are still allowed to have one independent project so long as you adhere to the other criteria. Second, we are limiting recipients to one project. If a recipient submits batches of projects, which we have seen in the past, they will be required to work with the TA vendor to select the one project that meets their immediate TA needs. Third, TAM projects for non-contracted TA recipients will require contracting support. So if a recipient has applied to the TA Marketplace as a non-contracted TA recipient, they will be required to provide a rationale for how their project will support their contracting efforts. For example, a recipient might have a project in Domain 1, which is around building data capacity to support workflows to prepare for billing to an MCP for ECM services. The recipient and vendor may note that it is a requirement for the managed care plan to have these workflows in place before becoming contracted with a managed care application that meets the most immediate needs within these requirements. And I apologize, I am hearing that I am frozen.
Yeah, we can see, I can now see you. Maybe if you repeat, I believe from 3. All right. Are you back?
I think I'm back.
Okay. I think where you kind of cut out was talking about was
Number
maybe in number
three.
3. Yeah. So if you wanted to start
Sure.
from there, that'd probably be good.
So the third new criteria is that for TA recipients that are not yet contracted with a managed care plan for ECM and or community supports, you will be required to provide a rationale for how your project will support your contracting efforts. So if you applied to the TA recipient as option 2 or 3, which is engaging with an MCP or DHCS approved, you will be required to include this information. The TA recipient and vendor may still submit projects under, different domains, but they should include information on how that project will support those contracting efforts. So for example, in domain 1, building data capacity, you might say that the MCP has requirements for contracting to prepare for billing. And so this project would help those efforts. We will be reviewing these on a case-by-case basis and will request additional information if that is needed. Lastly, the last new requirement is that projects may not exceed $150,000 and must be completed within 1 year. So vendors and recipients should work with most immediate needs within these requirements. Projects that do not meet the criteria above will either be sent for rework or will not be accepted. And additionally, please note that these projects must also meet the policies that are already outlined in the vendor policy guide and recipient policy guide. Next slide, please. All right. And just confirming, Katie, you can hear me again?
Yes, I can.
Great. So looking ahead at project timelines. So project end dates, please note that the dates below are subject to DHCS discretion and are subject to change. But right now we are planning that project submissions may wind down in January 2026. However, the teams will continue to evaluate based on the approvals made this summer. What has not changed is that all projects must have a project end date of December 31st, 2026 or earlier, and invoices again must be approved by recipients by February 15th, 2027. We will permit no-cost extensions, but they are not guaranteed and are really based on the information provided to us. And the policy still remains that they will be only considered for once per project and up to 6 months. Additionally, projects must be under 1 year, and they should be at least 4 weeks in length to be sure to allow for the proper approvals. Project start dates. Projects will not be able to be submitted to the TPA within the console unless a start date is less than a week from submission. But we are suggesting very strongly that project start dates be at least 4 to 6 weeks after the submission date to allow the necessary DHCS and TAM review and approval time. Please note that work is not allowed to begin prior to that project start date, and all signatures must be completed before a project may begin. Next slide, please. So how will we communicate these project determinations? For reworks and approvals, we plan to do the same process. So for project eligibility applications, TA recipients will continue to receive an automatic system email when a PEA is approved by DHCS. For reworks, recipients will continue to receive an email from the TAM team with feedback on the PEA and a request to withdraw that PEA and submit a new one with the feedback incorporated. For denials, TA recipients will receive an email from the TAM team indicating the PEA has not been approved and will be closed. We will also share any other information or next steps in that email. First, feedback.
Jenna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, you're good. It's randomly going in and out.
Yeah, I apologize. after I speak, I will rejoin under a different internet possibly. So I do apologize in advance, and we will be sure to get to all your questions in our Q&A document if we're unable to answer them. For scope of work and budgets, as I was stating, the way we will inform recipients and vendors of denials. First, for vendors, you will be informed via information provided in review comments in the TA console. TA recipients will receive an email with the determination. Once that information is shared with both the TA vendor and recipient, the scope of work and budget will be closed immediately. We are working on allowing a way in which recipients will be able to view comments in the console for scope of work and budgets. And once that functionality is available, we will inform recipients and they will no longer receive emails when it is determined a scope of work and budget will not move forward. Next slide, please. So just some other considerations. The teams will be evaluating projects and funding available as they are submitted to the marketplace. If it is identified that changes outlined are no longer necessary, or if new changes are required, the teams will share that information with all TA Marketplace participants. Second, the marketplace intends to conduct a survey for TA recipients this summer to identify those organizations willing to have their contact information shared with TA vendors. Please note that contact information that are shared with vendors must be used for the sole purpose of engaging in the TA marketplace. And lastly, for closed completed projects, we are working on a process by which you will be able to mark a project as complete for our system. We will be providing that in updated guidance coming this summer. Next slide, please. I will now pass it to Courtney, my colleague, who supports the review of scope of work and budgets on key criteria to consider when submitting a scope of work and budget.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jenna. So over the next couple of slides, both myself and my colleague will be walking through the step-by-step process of developing, finalizing a scope of work and budget, or SOW, both through the vendor and recipient consoles view. So the SOW process begins after the recipient has first submitted an application and it is approved to shop on the marketplace. Following this approval, the recipient will have then submitted a project eligibility application with their desired vendor to lay the foundation for the SOW. Notice of the project and confirmation that the vendor has the capacity to take on such project will be shared with vendors. After receiving this approval, the PEA is shared with the DHCS team for their approval. When the PEA is approved, then the vendor will be notified and the vendor and recipient should then meet to discuss the goals and the timeline for the then SOW. A skeleton and or empty SOW will be available on the TA Market console of the vendor to then begin filling out. So filling out the SOW. The TA vendor plays a key role in the SOW process. They are the person that is primarily responsible for entering all the necessary content into the SOW. However, this is not done in isolation. TA vendors should actively collaborate with the TA recipient to ensure the project aligns with the recipient's goals and expectations. To get started with a new SOW, the vendor will first navigate to the section labeled Project Scope and Work. Next, under the New and In Progress tab, vendors will find all newly approved projects as they're ready for you to begin entering in content. To open up and then start working on a specific SOW, simply click the Resume button. When first opening up the SOW within the console, you will see all the sections listed in a pending status. This will be both for the recipient and the vendor. To start, begin at the top of the project details with the project summary and advance to the section with the purple button at the bottom of the page named Continue to Section Name. When completing each section, this purple button will display as Complete Section, allowing you to advance to the next section in the list. The first section, the project summary, is limited to 2,000 characters, so it's important to keep the content concise and focused. This section should provide a high-level overview of what the project will include. Think of it as a snapshot of the overall initiative. It's essential that the summary aligns with the rest of the SOW and the priorly submitted PEA to ensure consistency and clarity. If the recipient is an organization, or if the organization is a hub, make sure to list all the individual entities that are a part of the project here in the summary. This helps provide a complete picture of who's going to be involved in the project. And finally, if the TA recipient isn't contracted yet, in the summary, please include a brief explanation on how the project will support contracting efforts. Vendor legal signatory. This is the person that is within the organization who is authorized to sign legal documents on its behalf. It's important to note that this person may not be the same as the main vendor contact for the project, so be sure to confirm who holds this authority. Also, the email address entered in this section is important. This is the address that will receive the automated signature request from Adobe Sign, so please double check for any typos. The goals and objectives section is also limited to 2,000 characters. This section should outline the main goals of the project, what the project is aiming to achieve, and how those goals connect to the services being provided. It's essential that each goal is aligned to the PEA and then the future deliverables listed under project services that we'll address later to ensure everything is consistent and aligned. If the recipient is a hub entity, be sure to list specific organizations that will be receiving services under each goal. This helps clarify who the direct beneficiaries are. In the non-duplication of funding section, the vendor will work with the recipient to detail any previous TA Marketplace projects, any cited rounds, or any justice involved rounds that funding was received. This section is limited to 4,000 characters, allowing vendors to include a brief 2 to 3 sentence explanation of how this new project will enhance, support, or build upon a previous funding. The purpose of the explanation within this response is to clearly describe how this project differs from previous efforts and show how the work is revolving rather than repeating. Please note that if this is the recipient's first request and they haven't received any prior funding, other CalAIM or similar programs, the vendor can just indicate NA. Sustainability. This section has a 4,000 character limit as well. This section should clearly explain how the TA project will continue to benefit the recipient after the project ends. The goal is to show that the impact of the TA will be long-lasting and self-sustaining. So there are a few project types that specifically require the sustainability section to be completed. This includes grant writing projects, including a plan that ensures the recipient will be able to apply for future grants independently. Workforce training projects, there should be a train the trainer or something similar that ensures that trained staff can pass on their knowledge to any new employee that joins the team. And then for technology projects that require ongoing maintenance, we ask that you please explain how the technology will be maintained, updated, or funded once the project has concluded. Project management and communications. So here the vendor can lay the foundation for a successful project by including critical details to establish clarity, accountability, efficiency in managing the project, including this can be scope management, explaining how any scope changes will be handled, quality assurance, describing how the deliverable will be and quality will be ensured, tools and software, listing any tools that will be utilized during the project like Jira or Salesforce, meeting cadence, defining regular meetings like kickoffs or status updates, communication channels, specifying how the team will communicate, and then also, most importantly, on-site visits, providing a rationale for any travel costs that may be related to in-person meetings. For any additional info, particularly for hub projects that are disclosing non-duplication of funding for all of the entities involved, any additional documents can be attached through this references section. Note that this section is optional and it is not required for every SOW submission. With everything we've covered thus far in regards to SOW, the project details section is complete. Next is the project plan that is going to be covered by Bella.
Thank you, Courtney. So the first part of the project plan tab is project type. The type of project selected will determine how the project services section is developed in the vendor console and how vendors will be able to invoice for work completed. Both project types can be used for either hands-on or off-the-shelf projects and require detailed descriptions for each deliverable. Where staff, roles, rates, and hours are used to justify the deliverable costs for deliverable-based projects, time and materials projects allow for more flexibility, permitting task adjustment based on unforeseen variables. It's important to note that a deliverable can only be invoiced for as the deliverable is completed for deliverable-based projects. Unused funds cannot be reallocated to other deliverables within the project. In contrast, time and materials projects allow for invoicing throughout the project timeline. However, it's important to note that although the model is flexible, the total cost cannot exceed the total approved project cost. Next slide, please. Invoice frequency. So once you select the project type, you'll choose the frequency at which you'll invoice, either monthly or quarterly. This is just anticipated, and if monthly is originally selected, but quarterly works better for the timeline of the project once you begin, you can invoice at that frequency instead. This coincides with the previously mentioned rule that deliverable-based projects can only be invoiced upon completion of each deliverable. Next slide, please. Next, you'll move on to project services, where you will clearly outline each deliverable and its corresponding outputs. This section must be aligned explicitly with the goals and objectives section that was previously filled out. Both deliverable-based and time and materials projects must add deliverables with staff hours. You will see that there's an option to include tasks within each deliverable. This is only applicable to time and materials projects. You will also note that there's 1,000 character limit for each deliverable, but no limit on the number of deliverables that you list. Next slide, please. If there are other direct costs associated with the project, this is the final section that must be filled out within the SOW. Most frequently, other direct costs are travel costs associated with the project, and they must adhere to the General Services Administration, GSA, travel policies, and travel rates. Once these slides are published to the TA Marketplace website, the links for these resources are located on this slide, as well as in the vendor policy guide. All costs must be entered in separate line items, and while there's no limit to the number of line items, each line item description has a character limit of 255. If travel is being requested in this section, elsewhere in the SOW should include an explanation for this travel, with the estimated number of trips, number of travelers, travel distance, and duration. We often recommend this information is placed in the project management section. Next slide, please. Upon initial completion of the SOW, the vendor will be able to preview each section in the final project summary. Once the vendor has made all necessary edits, they will submit the SOW and it will be sent directly to the TA recipient for their review and approval. Next slide, please. The recipient will find the SOW under Project Scope of Work under the tab in New and In Progress. Then select the SOW you're wanting to review. Next slide, please. In the recipient view, all but one section will say pending review until the recipient reviews and approves. The only section pending input from the recipient will be the recipient legal signatory. This is where the recipient will include a name and contact information for who will sign the SOW when the contract is produced. At the bottom of each section, the recipient will have an option to either approve or select action required. If action required is selected, the SOW will go back to the vendor for review. Next slide, please. Once the SOW has been submitted to the TAM team, we can begin reviews. If the SOW requires changes upon our review, the TA Marketplace will send back specific sections as well as review comments that correspond to each section. The vendor will receive an email prompting them to log into the console, view comments, and begin the rework. Once changes are made, the vendor submits the SOW, the recipient receives it for review and approval, and the TAM team can begin the review again. Next slide. Once all changes are made and the SOW can be approved, it is sent to DHCS for their review and approval. Once approved by DHCS, the SOW contract is sent via Adobe Sign to the vendor. Once the vendor signs, it's sent to the recipient for signature. The project can only begin once the start date passes or the contract is completely signed, whichever date is later. If there's an issue with Adobe Sign contract, the vendor or recipient can reach out to the TA Marketplace email. Next slide, please. And you can go to the next slide, actually. Oh, next slide, sorry. And now this is our overview process. So this slide provides an overview of the SOW and budget process. It will be available once the slide deck is posted to the TA Marketplace website and can be used as a resource to remind vendors and recipients of the workflow. And I'm now passing it off to my colleague Katie to speak about console functionality.
Thanks. If you go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about the console functionality. There have been some changes if you've have been in there and you're used to it. We go to the next one. So this is for vendors and recipients. They each have their own console, their view. It's a resource for the account users and the whole team to gain access to see ongoing PEAs or SOWs and their budgets. You are able to now add console delegates. So in order to do that, if you have a new team member, then go ahead and go into the organizational details. There'll be an icon on the left panel. You will see team members and you will click the view, and then you'll invite the team member, which will be on the top right corner, and then enter the user information that you want to add as the delegate into the form. Once you do that, the invite will go to the user and they will have a temporary password and be able to sign and gain access to the account. We do have those step-by-step instructions that you will be able to access on the marketplace. Go to the next slide. So once you've set for user permission, you can then determine the level of access that the capabilities within the organization that they're going to have. By default, all the users and the members' permissions allow them to create and access projects and invoices. But to go ahead and edit it, you will go to the permissions, and then if you are the organization admin, you will follow the following steps. So you will go into the console, you'll go to the organizational details, and then the team. You'll edit that specific team member's permissions, and you will select the member and scroll down, and there'll be a little edit button that you will select. And then you'll be able to click on the sidebar to select or deselect permissions. Noting that only an admin can elevate another user to that admin level. Also noting that updating point of contact within your console, this does not change contacts listed within a previous project application or SOW or the contact on the vendor's profile. You can go to the next slide. So we all know that happens. You get locked out. And in this case, you are able, as the admin, to reset your team member's console password. So in order to do that, if your team member has lost or had issues, maybe they got a new phone, they're not able to access that multi-factor authentication, so the MFA, and the admin can go into the permissions and reset the account using the following steps. They'll go back into that organizational details. They'll click the team member view, and then there'll be 3 ellipses on the right corresponding row for that team member. They will then select reset user account. By selecting that, an email will go out with a temporary login credentials. Upon signing in, they will be prompted to reset the password and reconfigure their MFA access. Hopefully they have found a new phone in order to get that MFA access set back up. But also just noting that this is also where if you have a team member that's no longer working with TAM or is no longer with the organization, that an admin can also deactivate the role there. If you go to the next. So now we're going to just do a couple policy reminders. If you go to the next one. So this one's for the SOW and budget amendments. Next slide. So for an SOW budget amendment, we're going to talk a little bit about the overview of it. Occasionally, there are just some unpredictable factors that may result in delays, needing extra time, or small changes to the initial scope. With that, there is an amendment process in place that you can request those changes to the scope of work and budget. You will do so by completing the form and submitting it to the PATH inbox. And it is available in the TA vendor policy guide. The vendor will be submitting this. The amendments must be submitted at least 10 days prior to the project end date in the current SOW. If the amendment or the end date of the project has already passed, we will not be accepting any retroactive amendments. This should be done 10 days before the project end date. Submitting an amendment request form does not guarantee that approval will be received, and each amendment request is reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Please note that DHCS does have the right to update this policy at any time. Also, that vendors should not and will not be able to invoice for a project while the amendment process is underway. You will need to have the approved amendment signed by all parties to continue. Go to the next slide. So there are 2 different amendment types. There is a no-cost extension, and just as a reminder, as of January 1st, 2025, the policy was put into place that there is only 1 no-cost extension that will be permitted per project and may not exceed 6 months. Also, we do strongly encourage that you work closely together between the recipient and the vendor. This is a collaboration to understand the current workload of each other's organizations, the timelines, the staffing, in order to really build and develop that SOW together to really account for that time. Also taking into account any holidays that may be coming up. The no-cost extension request form must be submitted to our inbox. Once it is approved, if it is approved, we do switch it over and it goes back into an action required for an amendment. And all information does need to align with what was requested in that form. So that end date must align with what was requested. If it's a different end date from what was requested, it will be sent back. We will only allow changes to the project end date and the legal signatory in the SOW budget console. So this is a new functionality that will allow for all no-cost extensions for that legal signatory to be changed. The second type is the full amendment. And as of January 1st, we'll be no longer accepting amendments to add or remove roles to deliverables, change labor cost, or add new deliverables. Full amendments must have clear rationale, including in the request form for the desired change that could not be completed via the submission of a new project. Full amendments also include a red line version of the approved SOW and budget, indicating the changes and what the request is. That should be attached with the amendment form. Examples of an acceptable amendment may include adding a new service market to a deliverable or exploring a different MCP for contracting than originally proposed. We can go to that next slide. So with this, with the process, basically the vendor will submit the SOW and budget amendment form within 10 business days of the end date via email. We'll review it and we will look at it for a couple things. If it's a no-cost extension, if it is exceeding a year, if it was approved, it will have to go to DHCS. If it's under and there is justifiable information, we'll inform of the approval. There's also the full amendment. We'll review it. All full amendments do go to DHCS for their review. We will inform you once it's received, and then we will inform you once a determination has been made or if additional information is needed to complete the full review. If it's approved, then the TAM team will put the amendment or the SOW into an amendment status, and that will allow for those changes to be completed. It will be started by the vendor and then received and reviewed and approved by the recipient. For a no-cost extension, once they approve it, it comes back to us for our final review, making sure everything aligns. If it's a full amendment, it does need to go back to the vendor for that submission, like a normal SOW original submission. Once we review and approve it, everything aligns, we'll send it back out for signature, which both the vendor and the recipient legal signatory will need to sign. You go to the next page. Withdrawing SOWs and budgets. Go to the next slide. So just a little overview. Although it's not desired, we do understand that some projects may not work out between a vendor and recipient. There is a process that needs to be completed in order to request the withdrawal of a project that has already been executed. You will take the request, the vendor and the recipient will work together to complete this form, and they will submit the withdrawal request form to the TA inbox. If you go to the next slide. So with this, you two will work together, the vendor and the recipient. You will complete the project withdrawal request form. The vendor and recipient will be on the email, attaching the form requesting the withdrawal. We'll review it, and either this is a project that was approved and executed, but there were no invoices that need to be submitted or that are awaiting payment. Otherwise, there is the other one that the invoices, some work has been completed, it's a time and materials, and invoices have been submitted and they're awaiting payment. If there are no invoices, we will go ahead and close the project and mark it withdrawn. You will no longer see that as an open project within your all's consoles. If there are invoices that have been submitted and awaiting payment, then after our review, if there's no additional questions, then we will inform you that we've received it and that the vendor should email us back informing us when all of the invoices have been paid. Once the vendor informs us that all invoices are paid, then we'll go ahead and close it out. Once the project is closed out, invoices are no longer allowed to be submitted. So that's why we want to ensure that everything has been completed and all invoices have been paid to the vendor. Next slide. And I think I'm passing it back over to Jenna.
Actually, it's going to me.
Okay, I'm going to pass it back over to Eliza.
Thanks, Katie. We can go to the next slide, please. All right, project progress reports. For those of you that have been on the marketplace for a while, you have received requests for these if you've had an active project at any point. The purpose of these are to ensure that you all are on track with your planned progress report and your actual TA project, and assess any potential risk there might be to completion, as well as gathering information from you all on the benefits of the project and any unexpected benefits from the work that you are doing with your vendor. Also identifying any adjacent resources and lessons learned that could benefit other marketplace users. So we have transitioned to a semi-annual progress reporting process to try and reduce administrative burdens for everyone. We now have a fall and spring version. The spring progress reporting period ended at the end of April. That was for Q4 of last year and Q1 of this year. We will have the fall progress reporting process starting October 1. That'll look back to Q2 and 3 of this year. So that's still a ways away, plenty of time to prepare. We do really appreciate all of the thought and effort you put into your responses. We do look at all of them very carefully and share all of the lessons learned and success stories that we read. Next slide, please. All right. We did have a bumper crop of progress reports this year because of how many projects were executed through the marketplace. So over 1,000 projects for the spring 2025 progress reporting period. Just a couple of the success stories we read and wanted to highlight. I won't read all of it, but just quickly, this project has strengthened our organization's ability to both contract with managed care plans and provide high-quality ECM services by clarifying ECM policies and developing streamlined processes. And then another one, a standout success story involved a justice-involved participant who had experienced chronic homelessness and significant barriers to care. Through our enhanced infrastructure made possible by this project, we were able to provide timely ECM, connecting with community supports, and secure stable housing within 90 days. So it's just really nice to hear directly from you all how this TA impacts the care that you provide, the hard work that the vendors are doing to help step up what you're able to do, improve your infrastructure, working with MCPs. It's just really helpful for us to see the true impact of the TA that the vendors are providing, the recipients are receiving. We got over 400 TA projects were indicated as completing their work for the project reporting period. And overall, our vendors received a 4.76 out of 5 star rating across all projects. So I would say overall, we are getting pretty positive feedback from our recipients for their experience on the marketplace. Next slide, please. And the TA recipient contracting survey, some of you will have noticed through the progress reporting process, we did add a new question this year or this time around to assess contracting status. We will be reissuing that question as part of the contracting survey. We are planning on having it be semi-annual, both January and July, so you can expect that at some point next month. The purpose of the survey is to track if TA recipients that originally applied as planning to contract or option 2 or as DHCS approval, option 3, have actually transitioned to a different managed care plan contracting status. So it's just trying to understand a bit more about where you are in your journey to be working with an MCP. And you will receive that via an email from the TA Marketplace with a link to the survey. And we do ask that you complete it even if there's been no change to your status from the last time you responded to it. And if you do have any questions, of course, please reach out to the Marketplace and we'll do our best to help you understand what is at issue. And it is distinct from the progress reporting process. Again, we did incorporate that question into this round, but it's an important item for us to keep our finger on the pulse of, so we continue to ask it at least semi-annually. And next slide, please. Jenna, would you like to take this over, or do you want me to handle this one as well?
Sure, and I'm going to remain off video just to hope for Wi-Fi to continue strong. But just an update that if you have a success story, we do encourage you all to submit that to our Pathways to Success team. Their email is listed here. We are really pleased to share that there was a recent TA Marketplace success story shared about a month ago, and really encourage you all with projects to submit your story. Next slide. Next slide. So again, just an update that we do have those on-demand resources publicly available. You do not need to be an approved TA recipient to have access to those resources. And as noted previously, we do anticipate about 7 new resources to be added by the end of this summer. So please be on the lookout for those. Next slide. And again, this is our typical resource side for all of you. I will note that we do anticipate updating the policy guides to reflect this new information shared today. Another new note is that filters have been applied to allow recipients to search for vendors that were approved with those areas of focus identified in round 5. So those are 2 of the new kind of information on this slide. And we can go to the next slide, which want to allow some time for Q&A. I do know that we have been answering questions as they have been submitted in the Q&A, but still encourage if there are lingering questions to please add those to the queue. In reviewing some of the more recent ones, there were some questions about if the new limitations were going to be applied to projects that are in the review queue. And yes, that is correct. If the project is not yet approved, this new criteria is being applied. All right. There were some questions also around timeframes. So again, we strongly encourage you all to allow for the 4 to 6 weeks for review and approval. That is particularly important for TA vendors as you're developing the scope of work and budget to set that project start date about 4 to 6 weeks from the date by which you are submitting the scope of work and budget to the DHCS and TAM teams for review. In terms of transitional rent, there have been a couple of questions about how, if projects can be approved, again, if it relates to transitional rent. So yes, as noted in the criteria, projects will be approved for TA recipients that do have an active or completed project if the project is related to transitional rent. However, we will only be approving that one project at this time. And we've answered that one. Is there a time frame requirement for a project? So the new criteria does state that projects should be completed in a 1-year time frame. However, we are allowing, continuing to allow no cost extensions for up to 6 months for one extension per project. But all projects have to be completed by December 31st, 2026, as that is when the PATH waiver will terminate. Right. We also have heard a few questions about some PEAs or recipient applications that are currently in queue. So as we have received an abundance of projects over the past few months, we are working through the multiple projects that have been submitted, whether it be recipient applications, PEAs, scope of work and budgets. So we are working through those right now. So again, we do include that in thinking about the 4 to 6 week time frame, particularly for scope of work and budgets when creating that start date. There have also been quite a few questions about vendor off-the-shelf projects, whether it relates to including new information about transitional rent, if it's focused on community supports, or if the project is over $150,000. So if you are able to meet the new limitations within the off-the-shelf project goals and those budget constraints of $150,000, yes, that off-the-shelf project will still be approved. However, given this new criteria and the emphasis to really focus on TA recipient specific needs, I think we would encourage really working with the recipient on a hands-on application. One, to be sure to work through the timeline that works best for you and the recipient, and also be sure to address those very unique goals of each recipient. If a PEA has been under review for a significant amount of time, I'm seeing a question about 2 months. Again, that is part of the review that we are currently conducting. If we have questions or concerns about your PEA, you will receive an email from the TA Marketplace team. So please be on the lookout for any of emails from our team regarding a specific project. Okay. Just looking to see if there are any other common questions being submitted. Again, just clarifying that, yes, currently the project or the limitation is that if a recipient has a active approved project or even a project that is completed at this time, they will not be approved for a second or third, whatever project number it may be. We are focusing on projects that are for new TA recipients that have not yet engaged on the TA Marketplace, again, at this time. There were also some questions about any updates to these policies. So as noted at the start, we will be reviewing and evaluating TAM projects and funding as they are submitted and approved by the TAM and DHCS teams. If DHCS determines that these policies are no longer needed, or if there are actually new policies that should be introduced, we will be sure to inform both TA vendors, recipients, and other key stakeholders when that information is available. We did have a question around hubs or organizations that represent multiple sites. So as noted on one of those slides at the beginning, the lead organization or the entity that is submitting the application will be the one that is considered the recipient for a TA project. And so if a recipient, another recipient has been included in a hub or hub-like entity project, but does not yet have their own unique individual project, they are allowed to submit that project under these policies. We do have a question on transitional rent projects, which is a really great question about if a recipient will need to be an approved transitional rent provider, or if projects can prepare them to contract and improve workflows before their approval. So we do have separate transitional rent guidance available again on the TA Marketplace website under our homepage, and it's also included in the recipient and vendor policy guides. The TA recipient is required to obtain a letter that is signed by the County Behavioral Health Department that basically supports them in their endeavor to become a transitional rent provider. There are key criteria that must be included in the letter, and that letter template is available also on the marketplace for recipients should they be interested in obtaining a signed letter. Okay. Seeing a couple more questions come through. I will note that there were some questions that were really great and great feedback. We are going to be taking all of these questions and any additional questions submitted to discuss with the teams for their input. And we'll be sharing that Q&A document in an email and on the website in the coming weeks. We also will be sharing these slides actually probably in the next hour. They will be going live on the website, and all TAM recipients and vendors will receive an email with a copy of those slides. If you do not receive that email, please check the TA Marketplace website under resources at the bottom of that TAM homepage, and you should be able to find the slide deck. Okay. Well, that brings us to the top of the hour. I do appreciate all of the questions, and I apologize for my Wi-Fi issues. We will again be addressing all questions in the Q&A document, and we hope to work with you to support our TA recipients in providing really great ECM and community support services to Medi-Cal members. If you do not have the opportunity to drop your question right now, please feel free to drop your question to the TA Marketplace team at the email address listed on the slide. I will note we do anticipate a lot of questions over the coming weeks, so please be patient with us as we work to answer all of your very important questions. And with that, I thank you all for your time and participation in today's webinar. I hope you all have a great and wonderful Tuesday, and we will talk with you again soon. Thank you so much.